Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another episode of From The Anvil. As you can probably see, I've decided to change my West Ham jersey. I had the 1999-2000 one on with the Dr. Martens on the front. I had that one on for quite a while, so I decided to go for white with Avco instead. I own 3 West Ham jerseys actually, and it was between Mark Noble one that I've got, the 99-2000 one, and this. Thought, let's go a different colour and choose this one instead. The topic that I posted on Facebook was regarding youth prospects. They've been training a lot with the regulars first team. They've been benched a few times, especially under Moyes' second stint, and some of them may even get some game time when our season resumes on Saturday. So I asked the fans if they were really excited to see any youth players get their opportunity and if it was a good idea to play them at this stage in the season, especially given West Ham's current predicament. Quite agreed that the young players should not be overhyped, but I'm a great believer in if they're good enough, they're old enough. It might make some of the older players think there's more competition for places in the team, and that's got to be a good thing. Well, competition's definitely a good thing, and there are places up for grabs. If you're good enough, you're old enough, yes and no. It depends on the maturity and how the players actually cope in the Premier League, because that's going to be top of their game and top of that level. As for places being up for grabs, there's pressure on two halves here. There's pressure on the older players, if we can call them that, for them to perform consistently and perform at a good standard week in, week out, because if they don't, there's a threat of being dropped. As for the youth players, it's an opportunity for them to try and win their way into the side and maybe replace a current player who's been a regular. So there's definitely a lot up for grabs there. It's not necessarily up in the air. It's not written in stone that youth players will definitely play, but it's going to be interesting to see who flops, who succeeds, and who needs more time. I've said all along, forget the 40 mil players and give these guys a chance. Well, it kind of proves that money doesn't really buy you success, particularly not in the Premier League. The money buying success attitude is something Roman Abramovich, in my opinion, introduced to the Premier League, and he ingrained that into Jose Mourinho's mind. And that's why I think it's probably fair to say Abramovich, with his spending money to buy trophies and not necessarily win them, but buy them because of you spending a lot of money on players, is more prioritised than developing the youth team. And that's all changed under Frank Lampard, because he's developed youth players into Chelsea. Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham particularly are notable. Start of the season, those two were a great combination. Tammy Abraham was scoring quite a bit at the start of the 2019-20 campaign. A lot of big clubs as well, Manchester United and Arsenal namely, are starting to use youth players. Man United did in the class of 92 with Beckham, Scholes, Neville brothers, Butt, etc. And they're starting to redo that now with McTominay, Marcus Rashford's obvious example, and Jesse Lingard. Not necessarily Jesse Lingard of this season, because he hasn't got a goal and assist in the Premier League yet, but he's another example of a youth player that's come up through the ranks and is now a regular starter. West Ham is notoriously known as the Academy of Football, so that's a name I think the club needs to work on and use in the first team. As for 40 mil players, it's a risk spending that kind of money because it can make or break. The price tag, there's pressure on the player to shake off that price tag, and if they don't, it's not going to look good for both club and the player. We have arrived at the toughest part of the season, and fans are saying try inexperienced young players. These games will be played under extreme pressure, and we will need very experienced players to avoid relegation. Youth is much needed in the team, but right now we need experience. Don't disagree with that. Here's my take on it though. The best time to start using youth players in West Ham's current predicament is not to start them or be totally dependent on them. It's to play them as substitutes and put them into the game at the right moment. So let me give an example. Say that West Ham are winning 3-0 and there's 10 minutes left of the second half. That's when you would possibly comfortably bring on 1 or 2 youth players, just to let them play without heavy pressure, like they have to make a major contribution to get points, but just to let them not breeze through, but just to let them get game time and let them get comfortable without having to feel like they need to make an instant impact. The games will be played under extreme pressure because that relegation battle is going to be really, really tough. And it is the toughest part of the season because every point is now going to count. And I think West Ham have to play Aston Villa, Watford and Norwich. We have to play all the bottom 3 teams as well. That Cardoso is a real player. It won't be long before he's in the first team. We also have Diallo that no one seems to mention. Cardoso's getting mentioned quite a lot. 19-year-old who West Ham signed from Portuguese side Boa Vista last summer for, I believe it was 2.5 million. He's been a bit of a forgotten man, actually, because he's spent all of his time in the under-23s, and he hasn't really started being with the first team since, well, until January, even, because Moyes has been putting him on the bench and never playing him. One thing that the coaches at West Ham say about Cardoso is that he's got a tremendous ability to read a game, which is something that Bobby Moore had as a characteristic. That doesn't mean to say that Cardoso is going to be like Bobby Moore, and especially with his young age, I wouldn't compare him to Bobby Moore right now, because there's a risk of overconfidence and overhype, which I've mentioned before in a previous video. That's not necessarily a good thing. But Cardoso is an exciting product, I will say that, and he should be given an opportunity, but in a more relaxed environment in a Premier League game. As for Diallo, Amadou Diallo, 17-year-old kid who signed a professional contract on his 17th birthday. He's an England under-17 international who plays alongside another West Ham player called Jamal Baptiste. Baptiste hasn't signed a professional contract yet, but he plays in defence. Diallo's a winger. He's been compared to Raheem Sterling, and Jack Collison really likes Diallo. 17-year-old in the Premier League right now, I would say it's a risk. So maybe when he gets to 18 years old, he can go out on loan a few times, get that experience, and then come back to West Ham and go from there. As we all know, West Ham have a long and proud history of giving young players their chances, and long may that continue. But having said that, with the situation the club is in at the wrong end of the table, this may not yet be the time to gamble with youngsters with little or no senior experience. Maybe they should name 1 or 2 on the bench for these remaining games and put them on as circumstances dictate. But calm, experienced heads are what we really need to ensure Premier League safety. Then experiment with some of the younger players in the starting 11. Exactly. That was the point I made earlier. Johnson struggled when he got into the side versus City. Yes, was against a tough team, but Ngakia was brilliant versus Liverpool. Ben Johnson, Jeremy Ngakia, it's that right-back situation again. 2 young players, both in the same position, and both could end up with that permanent right-back place. Ngakia is a contract rebel right now. He's not going to sign a new deal, and it seems like the management are veering more towards Ben Johnson. To answer that and give my thoughts on Johnson struggled against Man City, I don't think he actually did, because he tightly marked Aguero and pocketed Riyad Mahrez. Riyad Mahrez ended up being substituted because he was having a poor game, and Johnson was marking Mahrez for a lot of that game. I know West Ham lost that game 1-0, but it was a penalty that they conceded. It wasn't from open play, but Johnson had a really impressive debut, and to this day, it's his only first-team start for West Ham. I think that he's already going to be starting with the team anyway, because he signed the contract until 2022, so he's clearly a bit more appreciative and clearly more wanted by the management and Moyes. Ngakia was brilliant against Liverpool, and he's been quite brilliant since then. He's a pacey right-back, similar to what Ryan Fredericks is, because both are pacey, but Fredericks has been injured whilst Ngakia has stayed fit. Ngakia also, I was warming towards him, but this contract situation has flipped a lot of things on its head. I'm not going to say too much about it because he hasn't put pen to paper, and he still might do that. We wasn't called the Academy of Football for nothing, so give a few players their chance to shine. Although I do believe that Ngakia's 5k wage offer was a Mickey take, Although I agree players shouldn't hold clubs to ransom either. But in today money, he probably is worth 10k a week all day long. He played well in the home defeat against Liverpool. Bit of a cliche thing here when fans say no player is bigger than the club. That's true for West Ham because over the last few years we've had players that have held the club to ransom over contracts or refusal to play. In fact, I think it was Ron Greenwood who said that about Bobby Moore originally. No player is bigger than the club. No, Bobby Moore kind of held the club to ransom before the 1966 World Cup because he was stripped of his captaincy and wanted to go to Spurs. But it took the World Cup win for Moore to decide to stay on. West Ham's academy is traditionally one of, I think, the best in England. If you look at the players from the 60s all the way to the 2010s who came through West Ham's academy, it was very productive. The late 1990s era of Lampard Jr., Cole, Ferdinand, so to speak, those three all went on to play for Champions League and Premier League winning teams. And they can safely say that they were developed by West Ham at first and then moved on to another stage. And I think that's the model the club should start to follow now, and did with Terry Wesley. I think a lot of youth players are drawn into West Ham's tradition and reputation for developing good young players. And also, it was working for good coaches who have a lot of experience and have been former players at West Ham. And those are coaches that know the basis of the club and the foundations of the club. And that's very helpful. And also because of the opportunity for them to mingle with other people, get to know the infrastructure of West Ham, and then hopefully work their way up towards the actual professional level. And there are a lot of faces in West Ham's team that are doing that right now. So having read all of those comments, here's my take on the situation. I don't think it's necessarily wise to start the youth players given where West Ham are on the table and there's only 9 games left to really save the season. The only good time to start these players is when, one, they've played a couple of games, they've been out of this world, and they look like they are the right fit. Or 2, just with 10 minutes left in a game and West Ham are comfortably winning. Don't have that pressure of putting the young players on and trying to make them change the game. That's something that is unlikely to happen, and it's a lot of strain for an 18, 19-year-old. I wouldn't rule out any youth players playing in the remainder of the season. I think Cardoso and Sandy Silva definitely will. Sandy Silva could even be a good strike partner for Allaire, as would Yeti. And he might just be a diamond in the rough player. Yeti has not really been given a full chance, and Silva, more to the point, under 23 player who is really good attacker. He scored a hat-trick on his debut 2 years ago against Tottenham in the under 23 side, and that's the start of something good to come. Moyes using young players is somewhat similar to what Harry Redknapp did in the late 1990s with West Ham's academy then. It's similar to what Alex Ferguson did with the class of 92. It's similar to what Emery and Arteta did with Arsenal's youth, with players like, as I mentioned, Saka, Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah. So the youth are already with the club, they already understand the club, and there is a lot of places up for grabs for them to excel. Whether it's with West Ham or not, I'm hoping it's with West Ham, but if not, it's still a great basis for them, and it'll be interesting to see where they go in the future. I am working on a few technical issues. I've bought a new microphone, which I've been using to record this video, and I do have a camera of my own. I just need to set up a location down here, get a background set up, and make the scenery look a little bit better for the videos. So far this has been done on quite a budget, but I'm hoping to improve the video quality and audio quality of the videos very soon. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and also subscribe for more content. See you next time from The Anvil.